Before we move on and go into the nuts and bolts of how to facilitate a parent wellness circle, we want to make sure that you know about another resource that we have that you might use to work with parents. It is a book entitled The Parent Wellness Compass: Outfitting for the Journey. This book is full of reflections that are used for discussion. So you might ask yourself, which one would I start with? And that is completely up to you. Some people start with running parent wellness circles if they have a group of parents that they're already working closely with. They also might just gather a group of parents together to use this parent wellness book, Outfitting for the Journey. This book is available both as a softcover book and as a downloadable PDF. It can be used by individual parents, just one by themselves, with couples, or by groups of parents of any size. You can have a large group, small gathering in your living room, it doesn't matter. It is also available both in English and Spanish. So the book contains 32 readings. There are 4 from each of the 8 interconnected areas of family wellness. So they read the reflection, and then there can be a nice discussion following that. Then each of the 32 reflections provide a simple, powerful lesson on family wellness, questions for self-reflection relating to what they have just read, and space for each parent to record the wellness next step that they wish to take.
Now we're going to take a quick look inside the Parent Wellness Compass book to show you exactly what this resource contains. If you look in the table of contents, we will see that after an introductory section, we get right into chapter 1, and each of the chapters is based on one area of the 8 areas of wellness. So there's 8 chapters, the areas of wellness from the Parent Wellness Compass. So the first chapter is on healthy relationships, and each chapter contains 4 reflections. Here you see that they are standing in love, voice training for parents, all in the same boat, and the best time to start a conversation. Each reflection has making it personal, discussion, journaling questions. We'll take a closer look in a moment, but each one has that. And then each chapter has some next step worksheets that correspond to each of the 4 reflections. So let's turn the page here and look at the rest of the chapters. So we see chapter 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Again, going around the compass, the 8 areas. Handling emotions with 4 reflections, organization, work and school, spirituality, rest and play, stress resilience, care for the body, and then there is a concluding section. So let's take a look at what, I'll go to the first reflection in healthy relationships. Well, first, here in the introductory material, we go over the compass. We introduce them to the compass and the 8 areas of wellness. And then we introduce them to what is the next step. We talk about the making it personal section, and then to creating the next step. Now, next steps are common to both resources, to the Parent Wellness Circle Workbook and that program, and to this. But here's the difference. In the Parent Wellness Circle program, next steps are at the heart and soul of it, because it's a coaching program. Each week, a parent is setting a next step for that week, and then coming back next week and checking in on that next step, reporting how it went, and then setting another next step for the following week. Here, next steps are encouraged, but they're optional. So if a parent was doing this book on their own, they're encouraged to set a next step after they read a reflection. Of course, that's up to them whether they do it or not. The same if a group of parents were doing this book and having good discussion, the making it personal is the discussion part. They may or may not do next steps. They may not take it to the next step. Sorry for the double meaning there. So that's an important difference. Next steps are more encouraged here, but they're not at the heart and soul of the program, which they are in the Parent Wellness Circle. So here's chapter 1, healthy relationships. After an introductory page, we see our first reflection. That reflection is called Standing in Love. When we talk about standing in love, we talk about the idea that love is much more than a feeling, that it is a decision, not just a feeling. So that when you're up for the 4th time in the middle of the night with a sick child as a parent, you don't necessarily have that warm feeling of love in your heart, but you make the decision to stand in love and to do the loving thing and be there for your child. So we talk about that. We talk about how feelings sometimes can cause us to act before we think. Ideally, we as human beings, as parents, ideally we want to be more feeling and then thinking about how we want to react and then choosing to act. But of course, sometimes we do the feel, act, think. So just some good teaching points, and then each reflection closes. So here's an example of the making it personal. What do you think about the idea of standing in love? Think of a time when you related to someone from the pattern of feel, act, think, instead of the feel, think, act, and what happened and what did you learn from that experience? And then, so good discussion questions. And then if you want to set a next step, you turn to page 21. So if you turn the page here, you'll see another reflection, voice training for parents. This lesson is, because remember, there are some lessons in the Parent Wellness Circle program too. This voice training for parents is actually in there. So there's some overlap in the lessons too. And then, those are the 4 reflections, and then here's that next step. So remember, that first reflection was standing in love. If the person doing this book on their own or in a discussion group wanted to do the next step, they would use this form here to fill that out. So you can also see that this book works well for what we call one and done opportunities. So maybe you've never done anything for parents, and you want to start something new, and you want to gather parents for the first time. You might want to start with some kind of a one and done. You could take any one of these reflections. Rethinking discipline is here. Inside out, feeling and expressing the full range of emotions. You could read through these reflections. You could use one of these reflections and then just do the making personal. If you wanted to introduce the next steps, you could. And so that's a way it could be used. And then if people like that and wanted more and wanted to focus more on the kind of the next steps in a more intentional way, then you might move them into a Parent Wellness Circle. And so think about this book as a series of reflections, a series of resources that you will know which reflections would speak more to the parents and maybe be most helpful. And then that way you can use them as a one and done. You're free to make copies of this and share it with parents and to use it as a good way to do a little teaching and then invite them into some self-reflection. So that's a look inside the Parent Wellness Compass Outfitting for the Journey book. We also want to be sure to tell you about the companion journal for the Parent Wellness Compass notebook, the Outfitting for the Journey notebook that we've just been looking at. It's clearly labeled the companion journal. You can see it here. And what it contains is it breaks out separately the discussion questions, the making it personal questions for each of the 32 reflections, as well as those next step forms, you remember, that are in the book. And part of how this works, especially for individuals that are doing this on their own, parents are doing this without being in a group. Sometimes they don't like to write in the books because the books are so pretty, and they might want to do it more than one time. So they can download this. This is a free PDF that is available on our website. They can download this, or you can download it for them, and then they can write their responses in here, and it's all in one place. So you'll see the 8 chapters. Here they are. We know these by now, based on the 8 areas of the wellness. There's a little introduction here describing what this companion journal is, and then you'll see exactly what I was talking about. So here's the first reflection under healthy relationships is standing in love, and here are the discussion questions repeated here. It's the same discussion questions. And then it says if you'd like to make a next step, turn to page 11. We'll get there in a minute. And so here is the discussion questions for voice training for parents, the ones for all in the same boat, the third reflections. Again, on the bottom of both pages, they talk about if you want to make a next step. And then here's the fourth and final reflection under the Healthy Relationships chapter. And then now you see the next step forms repeated from the book. Here's the next step form for if you want to create a next step for standing based on the standing in love reflection. That's up here. And then the one for the voice training for parents. And then the other 2 reflections all in the same boat and the best time to start a conversation. Then a couple of pages for notes, and we repeat the same pattern for the next chapter. And that repeats throughout the whole book. The discussion questions for each of the reflections and the next step forms. So this is literally a companion journal, and it is available, as I said, on our website. They can download it. You can download it. You could also use this if you were doing a one and done for a parent gathering. Let's say you want to do that standing in love reflection. You could copy you copy the content of the actual reflection from the notebook, And then you could copy the discussion questions because they're in the book, but here they're kind of laid out in a bigger 8.5 by 11 format, and then you could either do the next step form from the book or from here in the companion journal. So that's another way that you could use it too. So that's the companion journal that goes along with the Parent Wellness Compass, How to Fitting for the Journey notebook. So I just wanted to take a moment to show you the Spanish translation, the Spanish version of the Parent Wellness Compass book, Outfitting for the Journey, La Brújula para el Bienestar de Padres y Madres. So this is a translation of the book, of the English book that I just went through, and you will see that it's organized in the exact same way. This chapter 1 is healthy relationships, the first area of the Parent Wellness Compass, and then the additional 7 areas are here. So it is the exact same book, and just if you have a need or an opportunity to use this in your context, we're very happy to make it available to you. And again, it's used in the same way to get parents together, either in kind of one and done, one-time experiences, or to get them in some kind of ongoing group. So again, I mentioned this to you. I just wanted to go ahead and show it to you so you could actually get a visual for it. And I should also add that this book could be given as a gift to parents, as a journal, as something for them to do on their own, because remember, that's another way in which the Parent Wellness Compass book can be experienced. The parents can do the book on their own, they can read the book on their own, and if they're co-parenting, they can have great discussions with their co-parent about what they're reading. So that's another use, that it can be given away as a gift to a parent or to parents. And you may have guessed by now that there is also a companion journal for the Spanish translation of the Parent Wellness Compass notebook, Outfitting for the Journey. And that is the El Compañero de Viaje, the companion journal. And it's structured the same way, the 8 chapters of wellness, and then the discussion questions, the making it personal questions for each of the reflections, as well as the next step forms. So that is also available as a free download on our website. And at this point now, we're going to turn and take a look at the Parent Wellness Circle Workbook as we continue to kind of compare and contrast the resource, the Parent Wellness Compass Outfitting for the Journey book, and the Parent Wellness Circle Workbook. So we're just going to take a quick look in this workbook, because we're going to be spending the rest of these tutorials doing an in-depth look at this workbook. But here, as a quick comparison to the Parent Wellness Compass book, where there's a few things you want to say. Just to remind you, this is the workbook that is used to run a Parent Wellness Circle, a group of 6 to 10 parents that meet for 6 weeks with a facilitator. That these groups are closed, the meaning that once they start, new members don't usually join during this 6-week program. And so, for example, if you're using the book, the Parent Wellness Compass book, and you had a large group of parents, and you met for several weeks or ongoing, your parents could come and go. It's an open forum kind of, maybe the first Wednesday night of the month, I'm just making this up, you have a parent wellness discussion group, and you could use those reflections, and that's not a closed group. People can just come and go, and the group, because doesn't have that, each experience is kind of self-contained. You read a reflection and you do the making it personal. Whereas using this workbook in this program, you meet for 6 weeks, typically consecutively, and you start and stop as a group together. The Wellness Inventory is an essential and unique part of the Parent Wellness Circle workbook in the program. You'll be learning a lot more about that. The parents complete that in session 1. That Wellness Inventory is not in the Parent Wellness Compass book, so that's another important difference. And then the participants set the next steps. Again, we saw next steps were optional and encouraged in the Parent Wellness Compass book. Here they are required. Here they are because they're at the heart and soul of what the program is about, is creating these next steps, and then your wellness next step, and then sharing them with one another. While the other book is primarily a series of lessons and reflections, this workbook in the program also does have some lessons in it. and that each week, each of the 6 sessions, there is some teaching component too that goes along with and augments the coaching in the next steps. So again, you see some overlap, you see some similarities, and you see some important differences. So again, we'll conclude now with that slide that we showed near the beginning that has the 2 arrows going back and forth, because now I think you have a better understanding of this. You can start with one. If you already have a group of people that are ready to make a 6-week commitment, you could start with the Parent Wellness Circle, and then if they want to continue to meet, or they want to continue to do something, maybe if not every week, maybe every month or something, or they want to continue to meet and have a conversation, have a lesson, set some next steps, you could take them into the Parent Wellness Compass. And so there is a program that we are aware of in San Antonio that is using this for they put it all together, and it's a 38-week program. Or you could start with the Parent Wellness. If you're doing a brand new parent, that's a very established, that one in San Antonio is a very long established Parent Wellness group, parents that meet every week. But if you're starting from scratch and you're trying to get your first get together of parents, you might take a reflection from the Parent Wellness Compass Outfitting for the Journey book and do what we called earlier a one and done. And if you get some momentum there and people are liking this and they want to kind of do a little deeper dive or make more of an ongoing commitment, you could form a Parent Wellness Circle. So that's why we have the arrows, and you can see how they go back and forth. So we just wanted to let you know before you completed the rest of these tutorials that there is another resource that both it's kind of alongside of this resource and can be used to follow up to the Parent Wellness Circle, or you actually might want to start with that. So now we're going to continue with the rest of the training, in which then we will be taking a very deep dive into this workbook itself and to the facilitator guide. And that's one more important thing. There is not a facilitator guide for the Parent Wellness Compass book, the Outfitting for the Journey book. Why? Because it's not needed. It's very simple. You read the reflections, the Making It Personal discussion questions are right there, and then the options to set next steps. That's why a parent could read that book on their own, the Parent Wellness Compass, and do that on their own. They would never do the Parent Wellness Circle program workbook on their own. That wouldn't work. It's not designed in any way for that. So there is no facilitator guide for the Parent Wellness Compass Outfitting for the Journey book. There is a very detailed and thorough facilitator guide that you will also be learning about here in just a moment and in the next tutorial, and then you'll be referring to that, and that along with these tutorials will prepare you for what you need to do to be a facilitator of the Parent Wellness Circle program workbook. So we continue now in the next tutorial with taking a deep look at both the program workbook and the facilitator guide.